Well, hello everyone. Reminds me of a show my dad used to listen to when I was a little boy growing up. My dad was eat up with classical music. I can't remember the guy's name, but every Sunday afternoon he'd listen to this show and the guy would come on and he would begin the show, "Hello everyone." And it became like a game in our family to try to time it and say it just at the same time he said it. I don't know why I just told you all that, but anyway, came to me as I said that. Today is Thursday, and we are on episode 94. This is a continuation of the JFK assassination series, and we are looking at Conspirator number 5, which is the Secret Service. Yesterday, our topic, our question was, did the Secret Service have any advance warning? We went through just the month of November, beginning in Chicago, on the 2nd and the 16th, it was Palm Beach. The 18th, it was Tampa. In the evening on the same day, the 18th, it was Miami. And then the 22nd, it was Dallas. They had plenty of advance warning. And yet, as we are going to learn, rather than amping up the security, they did just the opposite. Today's question is, how was the Secret Service's White House detail corrupted? I've had this brought up several times in the past. How could you get everybody in the Secret Service to go along with a conspiracy like this? It just boggles the mind. You'd have all these agents. And the answer to that question is you don't. It's a very militaristic organization in the sense that there's a chain of command and you follow orders. Really, all you got to do is have the guys at the top, maybe just the one guy at the top. I'm going to be looking at 3 guys who I believe were part of this conspiracy. And from their decision making, from their uh, leadership or lack thereof, uh, the Secret Service just completely fell down on the job, which was the point. So it's not that you have to corrupt the entire agency. You just got to corrupt the people at the top, kind of like the CIA, a rogue element within the organization itself. So we're going to be looking at James Raleigh, who is the head of the Secret Service. And I want you to keep in mind that he and LBJ are joined at the hip. These two are like uh, Siamese twins almost. They're so whenever I say LBJ's people going forward, included in that is James Raleigh. He is one of LBJ's people. Thomas Kelly, pictured in the middle, is the inspector that was sent down by Raleigh with one purpose in Dallas, and that was to clean up loose ends, and he did. He's pictured here at the back of the pack, following Oswald around in Dallas Police Headquarters, just observing, watching, keeping a close eye on things. This is obviously after JFK is already dead and gone. And on the far right, you have Emry Roberts, who is the Secret Service on the ground running the Dallas show. Now, technically, if you looked at the documents, the guy running the show is Roy Kellerman in the passenger seat of the limo, front seat. But everybody knows if Emry Roberts is in Dallas, Emry Roberts is running the show. And so for all practical purposes, Emry Roberts is in charge. So those are the 3 that I believe corrupted the Secret Service in Dallas. A few other little pictures to show you that we'll be looking at today. The question, in answer to the question, how was JFK's protective details stripped away, which exposed him? Some of this we looked at early in this series, going back to, I did was it just a bad day episode for the Secret Service? I think it was episode 3 or 4 or 5. It was in there. It was in that first week, I think. And then a second episode, Secret Service Part 2. And we talked in specifics about all the security breakdowns in the motorcade route. So I'm not going to go in detail in these, but just a quick review. Obviously, top left, the bubble top was removed. That was, as we learned yesterday, that was a decision by Bill. That was a LBJ decision through his aide, Bill Moyers, who then tells the Secret Service agent who's driving the backup car to remove that bubble top. Top right is a picture of the motorcade as it is just beginning at Love Field. And you see Don Lawton there waving his arms like, what do you want? And Emry Roberts, who's sitting up in the car right behind the limo, has just given an order to him and his partner, Rady, there to not ride on the running boards of the limo. This was standard operating procedure that these two Secret Service agents would ride the limo and be on board, out of the way, obviously, on these running boards, but on board nonetheless. The last minute, Emry Roberts told them both to get down and to not ride the limo. And it was such a surprise to Lawton and Rady, they didn't know what to do with themselves. So they went downtown, since they weren't in any way, they didn't have a job to do. That was their only job. That was their assignment. And since he has just told them not to do their assignment, they went to a coffee shop. They didn't know what else to do. But you can tell Lawton's like, what? You know, that was not standard operating procedure. By the way, in the foreground there, you see Paul Landis hopping in the back of that car. That's the Secret Service agent we're going to talk about in a future episode, who just recently came out with some new claims about the bullet, the magic bullet, the so-called magic bullet. So he was in that motorcade. He ended up at Parkland Hospital. So we'll talk about him later. Bottom right is the picture of the motorcycles. Standard operating procedure in a motorcade, Secret Service was involved. You always had 12 motorcycles. And in this case, you had them out front, you had them to the side, you had them in back, so that if there was a shooter from distance, the line of fire was clouded because these motorcycles were in the way. And of course, being on a motorcycle gives you the ability to chase down a pedestrian if need be. It just gives you a lot of maneuverability, a lot of flexibility, and you can stay in the way of a field of fire. Field of fire is very important. It needs to be clear. And you're going to see this is one of the biggest decisions that was made early on in this motorcade that differs from all the other motorcades, is how they cleared the field of fire. Here in Dallas, they stripped away the 4 bikes that were usually in front. They stripped away the 4 that were to the side, and all they left were the 4 to the rear. So if you're trying to shoot the president from the front or from the side, the field of fire is clear. That is hugely significant. Another thing, as you can see in the bottom right, this is a picture of a motorcade not long before Dallas, which was in Dublin, Ireland. And you can see the Secret Service agents on the running boards there. You can see the follow-up cars, Secret Service agents again on running boards and in the car. But what I really want, and it's really hard to see, but if you really look closely at that front seat in the president's car, there's a man sitting in the middle seat. And his name is Godfrey McHugh. Okay. That was, again, standard operating. Godfrey McHugh always sat in the front middle seat in all of his motorcades, except Dallas. And if you remember the first shot to hit JFK, the entry wound was in the front neck. And when they got the limo to Parkland Hospital, nurses were looking at the bullet hole in the front windshield, putting their pencils through it. That first shot went right through that windshield and hit the president right square in the neck. If Godfrey McHugh is sitting there, the field of fire is blocked. Again, field of fire. But by removing the motorcycles from the front and the side, that that front shot is available to them. By removing Godfrey McHugh from that front middle seat, the sniper had a clear shot at the president. There's one other thing that you can't see in this picture. Maybe it's in another pic. No, it's not. And that is, I'm going to go back here, is that there was always a flatbed media truck right in front of the president's motorcade, where the media could stand on this flatbed truck and take pictures. And that's how it was in every motorcade. It was always in the front. And in this case, in Dallas, they moved it to the rear, so that the flatbed media truck was also out of the field of fire. So, and when you watch there was a car in front of the limo, but when you watch the Zapruder film, you see how far out in front it was. It was way out in front. It wasn't close. It was way out in front. So my point in saying all this is that if you were trying to expose the president to a front or side shot, which is going to be at ground level or slightly above, that field of fire is going to be really important to clear. If you're shooting down from a building, the field of fire, the only thing you got to worry about there is trees, possibly, or telephone poles or something. But from a ground level or slightly above ground level shot, you got to have that field of fire clean. You can't risk hitting another spectator. That creates more physical evidence. Obviously, you want a clear field of fire so you can see the target. And you would do things like this. You would remove the bubble top. You would remove the motorcycles from the front and the side. You'd remove Godfrey McHugh from the front middle seat. You would remove the flatbed media truck from the front. And voila, you've got a field of fire that's clear. A couple other examples we discussed earlier. Obviously, the motorcade route being changed. Top left, you can see the original route was supposed to just continue straight on Main to the interstate. So there would have been no turns. It's just been a straight. Well, that doesn't take him through the kill zone. And the speed would be such that the moving target would be impossible to hit. But if you make him take a right-hand turn, 90-degree onto Houston, and then a 120-degree turn left, right in front of the Texas School Book Depository, right in front of the Deltex building, which takes him right in front of the grassy knoll, you've now brought him right through the kill zone. And you've slowed down the limo through these two 90-degree plus turns where the moving target is now almost stopped. That's another way to expose him. The tall office buildings, this is, we saw this yesterday. There was a consistent theme amongst all the target cities where these threats were revealed. Chicago, there was a tall office building that the Patsy worked in, right? Thomas Arthur Valley worked on the third floor of a tall office building, and there was a 90-degree turn right in front of that tall office building. In Tampa, it was the hotel, the Florida Inn Hotel, which was extremely tall, which Lopez was, Patsy was going to be probably in that. And then, of course, a 90-degree turn right in front of the Florida Inn. And you get to Dallas, and it's the Texas School Book Depository with a 120-degree turn right in front of it with Lee Harvey Oswald in that building set up to be the Patsy. But before that, it goes through the city of Dallas, through amongst a bunch of tall buildings. And because they had already told the 112th Military Intelligence Group to stand down, which is represented by that bottom picture on the left, that's their logo, they don't have any security on the ground. They don't have any security to go up and check the open windows or people on balconies overlooking. You don't even have people on the ground to check for spectators that are up on the street level watching the motorcade go by. You just don't have enough security. All you have is what Secret Service you have in the motorcade itself. That's it. So again, you just see case after case where they're just stripping away one layer of security after another, even though they're at the tail end of a Texas trip that now we realize that in the month of November, the threats have been coming fast and furious. And they're going to the most dangerous city, Dallas, last. And instead of adding to the security, amping it up, they strip it away. And he's just completely exposed. I told you, I think it was yesterday, I mentioned that there were 3 locations, possible locations for the shoot. One was Love Field. That turned out not to work, just too many people. Second one was Dealey Plaza. That did work. But if the first 2 didn't work, the third one was going to be the Trademark, where he was giving a speech, which you'll see there was a big argument about whether or not to go to the Trademark, and who wanted it and who didn't want it is very telling. The Trademark had was practically undefendable. Too many catwalks, too many entries and exits, it's just a security nightmare. And somebody from distance could take the president out fairly easily in a building like the Trademark. And in any case, they were making contingency plans because they were determined. These conspirators were determined JFK was not leaving Dallas alive, or Texas alive. If none of the 3 above worked, the next day JFK was going to LBJ's ranch for a big picnic, and they would have got him there. Obviously, that's last case. That's worst case scenario for LBJ, to have him die on your ranch, but that would have been the last case, or last possible chance to get him in the state of Texas. But so let's go through this and see how his security was stripped away and how the Secret Service was intricately involved in every decision. It was involved in every aspect of the assassination, because it was involved in every aspect of the Dallas trip. It planned the trip to begin with. It was completely planned out by the Secret Service. All of the Dallas plan was Secret Service. The lineup of the motorcade, the route of the motorcade. Now, the mayor made the decision to change the motorcade route, but he had to get the permission of the Secret Service to do that. The security breakdowns, just the ones we've listed so far, there's many more, trust me. The evidence suppression during and after, the witness intimidation. I think I referenced this yesterday. Elmer Moore going to the Parkland doctors and basically threatening them to change their story about entry and exit wounds, et cetera, et cetera. The theft of JFK's body as they take it from Dallas back to Washington for a rigged autopsy, which of course they're in control of that as well. In every step of the way, the Secret Service it's kind of like LBJ, in the sense that if you're the conspirators, you're thinking, how do we immunize ourselves afterwards so that none of us get in trouble for this or get investigated for this or anything? Well, it'd sure be nice if we had the future president on our side, so he's going to have to be part of this plan. Well, these same conspirators, when they're thinking about how do we set this whole thing up to happen to begin with, on that front end, you're thinking of the Secret Service. You got to have them on your side, because they're the ones that are handling the trip. They're the ones handling all the security. And to strip that security away and make sure that he's exposed, you're going to have them on it and involved in this. So they play a very necessary part, is my point. One of the ways in which this was accomplished was by removing the people that would have seen or been aware something's afoot. Remove the people that would not play along. Remove the people that were very experienced and would know, hey, wait a second, this isn't how we normally do things. Hey, wait a second, we need these people. We need the military intelligence group be on the ground. We need Godfrey McHugh sitting in the front seat. We need that media truck. They would know. They would know. Now, one of the very first things that happens, and I don't have it listed here in my notes, but I want to go ahead and mention this, is that L. Fletcher Prouty, whose job it was to arrange for the local military intelligence security to join up with the Secret Service in whatever city they were doing the motorcade. That was his job. Well, a week before the Dallas motorcade, his boss, Ed Lansdale, came to him and said, "You're going on vacation." And he's like, "I am?" It wasn't a scheduled vacation. And he ended up halfway around the world on a vacation. They called it a vacation. He was basically escorting some VIPs, but his job, if he was not on vacation, if he was available like normal and was in charge of this Dallas security, his job would have been to get that 112th Military Intelligence Group in there to provide extra security on the ground and in the empty buildings, et cetera, et cetera. But he wasn't there. He found out about the assassination halfway around the world when he read the newspaper. And the first thought he had was, hey, I wonder about what was the 112th doing? And when he got back, he found out the 112th had been told to stand down. It stuck in his mind, and he never forgot that. He's like, why was I sent on vacation at that particular time? And why was the order given for the 112th military to stand down? Knowing what we know about the threats against the president's life, knowing what we know about Dallas and its hostility to JFK, why on earth would the 112th be told to stand down? And the only conclusion he could come to is that he was ordered. This is after years of researching this and realizing that his boss, Lansdale, had a part to play in this, and that putting two together, realizing it was his boss who told him to go on vacation. And that was the reason the 112th was not called. He realized later he had been gotten out of the way. He had been removed. He was one of them that had been removed so as not to complicate things for the overall plan. But there were other A-listers who were absent that day. Gerald Benn was the head of the Secret Service White House detail. And for the purposes of the Dallas trip, he was replaced by Roy Kellerman, which you remember, Roy Kellerman rode in the front seat. His job was to jump over the seat, to vault over the seat after the first shot, jump on top of the president, throw him to the seat, and provide security using his own body. Never moved. Never moved. If it had been standard operating procedure, Gerald Benn would have been in that seat instead of Roy Kellerman. Floyd Boring, it's interesting about Gerald Benn. He was actually informed by his boss he was also going on a vacation, and that and he hadn't taken any vacations. If you go look at his personnel records, in all his years in the Secret Service, he'd never taken a vacation. He's probably an extremely frustrating individual for his wife to get along with because he never took vacations. And when they came to him before the Dallas trip, said, you're going on vacation, he didn't know what to do with himself. Asked later what he did on his vacation, where he went. He said, I didn't go anywhere. What'd you do? I mowed my grass. He didn't know what to do on a vacation. But they had to get him out of the way. So they informed him he's going, just like L. Fletcher Prouty. Fletcher Prouty was a problem because he would have ordered the 112th Military Intelligence Group to be in Dallas that day. So they told him to go on vacation. Gerald Benn would have been a problem. He'd been in charge of that motorcade. There have been a lot of things that we've talked about that happened that wouldn't have happened if he'd been there. And if there was a shooting, he would have jumped up and got on top of the president. So they had to get him out of the way. So they told him, take a vacation. Floyd Boring was in charge of advance arrangements for Dallas. He was replaced by William Greer, who was the limo driver. And you remember how incompetent he was. And, he had one job, hit the gas after the first shot. And you got 5.5 seconds before the fatal shot. Plenty of time to get out of Dodge. Never moved. Actually came to a stop. Depending upon what witness you hear. Stop or rolling, crawl, whatever. Slow enough for a man to get out on foot and catch him. Floyd Boring would not have been the driver, but he would have been in charge of advance arrangements for Dallas. And instead, he's replaced by William Greer. Now, let's talk about that driver, because this is your regular driver. His name is Thomas Shipman, and Shipman was a straight arrow. Had been the president's driver for a long time. And on October 14th, 1963, while on a protective detail at Camp David, he died suspiciously in his sleep. They ruled it a heart attack. Just died. He had just gone through a real comprehensive health exam, which was required on a yearly basis for Secret Service agents, and came out with flying colors. He had no heart issues, no health issues to speak of, nothing. after his death, there was no toxicology test, there was no autopsy, and there was absolutely no news coverage. I didn't find out about this story until I heard an interview with Vince Palomero, and he had actually gotten in touch with the family and spoken with the family about, and he didn't find out about it for a long time. It was hush hush. Well, when he talked with the family was very suspicious. This is years later. The family was very suspicious. Shipman had just passed his annual comprehensive physical exam, no record of any heart troubles. He was looking forward to the trip, so it wasn't like, he had relatives in Dallas. He was talking about it. He was looking forward to the trip. And according to family members, even his kids who knew, when he ever talked about what he would do as driver, if there was ever any trouble, he always said the same thing: I'd pull out a line and get out of Dodge. And the family, in order to make this go away as quickly as possible, no toxicology test, no autopsy, no news coverage, quick burial. Within 2 days, he was buried, and they were pressured by JFK's own doctor, Admiral George Berkeley, who happened to also be LBJ's doctor, by the way. They were pressured by this doctor for a quick burial. And slam bam, thank you, ma'am. The driver was out of the way. And replaced by William Greer. Now, the interesting thing is, Vince Palomero and others, I've heard others talk about this too now that the story has come out, spent a lot of time trying to brainstorm why this would be, if there was hanky-panky involved with his death, why? What would be the possible cause or reason? And he came up with 3 scenarios. One scenario would be, well, he had foreknowledge of the Dallas plan, or had no foreknowledge of the Dallas plan. Or the second scenario, Shipman had foreknowledge of the Dallas plan but refused to play along. Well, the third scenario is Shipman was a dirty cop. Well, only the second scenario makes any sense of those 3. Because if Shipman was a dirty cop, he would have been in Dallas that day. They could have trusted him to do what they wanted him to do as the driver, which is to hit the brakes. If he has no foreknowledge of the Dallas plan, and they send him, then he's going to do what he's told his family he would always do. As soon as trouble hits, he's going to hit the gas. And that won't work. So the only scenarios that works is that he had foreknowledge of the plan but refused to play along, so they had to get him out of the way. Now, again, I'm not saying for a fact that we know. His family's extremely suspicious. This is what happened. Vince Palomero is suspicious. This is what happened. And when you put it in context with everybody else that got out of the way, Gerald Benn, go on vacation, replaced by Roy Kellerman. We got to get the guy that normally runs the Floyd Boring. We got to get him out of the way. I'm going back here. Floyd Boring, we got to get him out of the way and replace him with William Greer. Well, both of those guys end up in the front seat of the limo, and neither one does their job. And then L. Fletcher Prouty could be a problem because he would be responsible, and he always does, to get the 112th Military Intelligence Group in there. So he needs to go on vacation too. So far, if you're doing a head count, you got Fletcher Prouty, who's been sent on vacation, Gerald Benn, who's been sent on vacation, Floyd Boring, who's been sent on vacation, and Thomas Shipman, who's dead. That's the 4 key guys on the ground in this motorcade, in this Dallas trip. But that's not all. 11 of the most experienced members of the White House detail had been transferred to other assignments within 60 days of the assassination. And they were replaced by, it took years to get to the White House detail. It's one of the reasons why they get so mad at Abraham Bolden. We'll tell that story on Monday, about how he was just this inexperienced Chicago Secret Service agent, bumps into JFK one day when JFK's in Chicago. JFK shakes his hand. Next thing you know, by special request of the president, Abraham Bolden's on the White House detail. Everybody's like, wait a second. It takes years to get there. You skip to the head of the line. You're the teacher's pet. And of course he was black, and that didn't help things. It took years to get to that. That's the plum assignment. And then you stay in that job as long as you can. 60 days before they went to Dallas, they circulated out 11 of the most experienced members of the detail and replaced them with the inexperienced people that hadn't paid their dues, people that hadn't been on track to be in those jobs. It just was a real quick random decision, seemingly random. And you remember now what happened in Dallas with all those inexperienced agents. Well, first of all, why would you replace experienced with inexperienced? I mean, we were talking about that in class one day, and I just used my own experience as a teacher as an example. I said, when I was a first-year teacher, I did whatever the principal told me to do. I did whatever an experienced teacher in that hallway told me to do. I didn't question anything. I didn't have an independent thought. I was like an automaton. I was cheap because I was young. I was a first or second year teacher, and I would do what I was told. Where teachers become problems for their bosses down the road is when, after 25 years of teaching, they've done it a few times. They know what they're doing, presumably. And when some half-assed new idea comes down the pike, and they're always coming down the pike, teachers that are experienced are thinking, wait a second, that won't work. My favorite is when an elementary principal, the happy playing with the kids, let's give them all stickers and gum and stuff. When they come along with their ideas for high school, I'm thinking to myself, that won't work. High school kids don't respond to that kind of stimuli. They'll think it's stupid. That's what happens. When you've been around for a while, you start thinking through using your experience. Will that work? Does this contribute to their education? Does this help student learning? Or is this just another gimmick? Because we do a lot of gimmicks in education. But it's the same way in any field. You got experienced Secret Service agents, and they're looking around, and the motorcycles are gone. They're going to be like, "Wait, what's wrong? What's up with that?" And if the flatbed media truck is missing, and if Godfrey McHugh's not sitting in the front seat, and if they're surrounded by tall buildings, then they look, they don't see the 112th Military Intelligence Group on the ground. And then they look at the motorcade route. It's got these hairpin turns, and it's taking them through the downtown. The experienced guys are going to be like, whoa, time out. This ain't going to work. And then they take the bubble top off. They're like, wait a second. They're going to notice that. But inexperienced agents, they're just going to do what they're told. They don't know what they don't know. I was talking to a first-year teacher the other day, and he was all excited. He was telling me what he was going to do in this one particular class. And I was thinking to myself, well, let me know if that works, because I don't think that's going to work. And then sure enough, a week or so later, I bumped into him. Hey, how'd that go? Not like I hoped. But that's the deal between experience and inexperience. And it's the same way with Secret Service agents. They know, because they've been down this road many times, and they've been in this White House detail for a lot. They know the threat level. They've been filling out the threat sheets. They know what's up. These inexperienced people are just replacing them at the last minute, jumping in. They're all eager. They're all wanting to climb the ladder. Now they've got this plum assignment. They're like, wow. And they're going to do what they're told. And you're going to see in a minute why that's important. Or maybe it won't be today. Well, I'll go ahead and tell you. One of the reasons why nobody in the backup car moved. Remember, there was the 8 agents in the backup car. You had the 2 in the limo. They didn't move. Then you had, this is while the shooting's happening, the 8 in the back, 4 of them are running boards, 4 of them are inside the car. They didn't move. The only one who moved eventually was Clint Hill to run up and check on Jackie, but they didn't move. And according to witnesses, Greer, the driver, had what looked like a radio up to his ear, and he was listening to the radio. And so did Sam Kinney in the backup car. Well, guess who was in the very front car, way off ahead? It was the Emry Roberts, the guy who waved off the two that were supposed to be on the limo running boards. He's now way off in front, and he's, according to the Secret Service agents who testify, he's yelling into his radio, which Greer is listening to and Sam Kinney is listening to, and passing the word to everybody else. And what is he saying? He's saying, stand down. The shooting is taking place, and the boss is telling them to stand down. Now, if these are experienced agents, they're saying the hell with that. The president's being shot, and they're doing what instinctively they've been trained to do what they in this moment. But if you're an inexperienced agent, or you're corrupted like Greer and Kellerman possibly, you just sit there. Well, the boss said no. And before you had, instead of, these guys in the backup car, on the running board are supposed to get off with their machine guns, their automatic guns, and tear off in the direction of the guns and chase down the perp. They never moved. Nobody did. The car was supposed to get out between the president's limo and the shooter. The backup car never moved. The limo was supposed to take off. Never moved. Nobody moved. And the guy in the front, Emry Roberts, is yelling into his radio, stand down. That does not work if you have experienced agents. That would not have worked with Shipman, the driver. But he's dead and gone. Shipman would have took off. That would not have worked if you have your normal guy sitting in that passenger seat. That would not work with the follow-up car if they're experienced agents. But when they're inexperienced, they just do what they're told. I told you that there was a dispute between Kennedy's people and LBJ's people about where the speech was going to occur. The Kennedy's people wanted the motorcade to end here. This is the Women's Museum downtown. It's actually in Fair Park. Some of you are familiar with Dallas more so than I am, so you'd be able to tell me right where that's at. I'm assuming that's in if it's Fair Park, that would probably be on the outskirts of Dallas. Anyway, the reason they wanted this location is because it was defendable. It only had 2 entrances and or exits. And it had a garage door. You could drive the limo right into the building and shut the door behind you. So you don't have to get out and walk. And there was an inner courtyard where you could park the president's limo. It was a defendable location. But the LBJ people, remember now, the LBJ people are in tight, LBJ especially, with James Rowley, the head of the Secret Service. They want the motorcade to end here at the trademark. And Texas Governor John Connally was LBJ's man in Texas. And so he worked behind the scenes to arrange this and get the Secret Service on board, and then to basically browbeat the Kennedy people into accepting this as a location. They use the locals to say, hey, this is where it needs to go. This is the best place. This is be the best for, it holds more people, et cetera, et cetera. But it did. That's the thing. All the things they said about the trademark turned out not to be true. They said that you could get more people in the trademark, but it turns out it holds 20% less people than the women's building. It's not more secure, it's less secure. The ceiling, as you can see, is full of catwalks. This building has 42 entrances and exits with no garage door entrance. You got to park outside and walk into the building. 42 entrances and exits. If you don't have the 112th Military Intelligence Group there to provide security on the ground, and you only have basically 12 Secret Service agents in Dallas, there's no way you can defend all that. It's not defendable. But that's the location that was decided on. I think I mentioned this in an earlier episode. John Connally even faked a phone call. He's on the phone with the Kennedy people, and he faked a phone call like, hey, hang on a second. I just got a phone call from the Secret Service. And he faked like he was having a conversation. When he got off, he told the Kennedy people, yeah, Secret Service wants it at the trademark. And the Kennedy people went along because Connally, LBJ, the Secret Service, they were all saying trademark. Kennedy people were saying women's fair building and women's museum. And so they sort of deferred to the locals. And this is why I say, of course, this was the third location. If they don't get him at Dealey, they're going to get him at the trademark. And they needed a building that was insecure, undefendable, to accomplish what they were setting out to accomplish. So you can see how his security is being stripped away, exposing the president. Every decision is exposing him more, not protecting him more, exposing him more. Emry Roberts is the guy on the ground that is being trusted by his higher ups to make sure everything goes to plan. Here you see him. I've got him in several different photographs here, circled by yellow. He was sort of like the enforcer. He was in charge of the motorcade. He was in charge of all of these things that we've just discussed. Emry Roberts, from the start of the motorcade at Love Field, by waving away the two Secret Service agents, getting them off the running boards, and all of the things that happened subsequent to that we've just mentioned, Emry Roberts was in charge of that. And I had mentioned this in the intro. This is the decision that he made right from the get-go to waive off Don Lawton and Hank Ripka. I think I mentioned Rady. It's not Rady, it was Ripka. Lawton and Ripka. And they were supposed to ride on the back of JFK's limo during the motorcade. And Emry Roberts is the one who yelled at him and said, "Hey, no riders. Stand down." And so I've got a couple pictures here showing. So, I mean, from the very get-go. And what that does is not only is security being stripped away from his limo, which, you think about it, if that guy's on that back running board and the president gets shot and the guy in the front seat never moves, Kellerman, well, probably Lawton or Ripka would have jumped in on him. And so, but by stripping that away and telling them to stand down, now that you know Kellerman's not going to move, you don't have to worry about anybody jumping in on top of the president, because they're gone. They're down at a coffee shop drinking coffee, waiting for their next orders or their next assignment. Godfrey McHugh is the second. And you see him, he was always near, he was extremely loyal to President Kennedy. You've been introduced to him before if you've been following these episodes. I mentioned that on Air Force One, he's the guy that went looking for LBJ and found him in the shower in the fetal position. And LBJ was saying, "It's a plot. It's a plot. They're going to get us all. It's a plot." Godfrey McHugh reported that. Well, Godfrey McHugh was the Air Force military aide to the president, was the brigadier general. He always sat in the middle of the front seat of JFK's motorcades. Between Greer and Kellerman is where he would have been in Dallas. You can see his uniform. You see that picture there. If you look to that windshield, you can see him sitting in that front middle seat. I'm sure it wasn't comfortable, having three fully grown men sitting in the front seat of that limo. But that's where he always sat. You can see the medals on his chest there in his uniform. That's him. Anyway, the Secret Service removed him and made him sit in a car at the back of the motorcade, just like they did the flatbed media truck. And when he protested, they said this became a handy excuse in all of these cases. Whenever anyone would protest, "Why are we taking the bubble top off? Where are the motorcycles? Why are you moving me to the back?" They would always say the same thing. "Well, President Kennedy doesn't like the motorcycles. They're too loud. He wants an unobstructed view of the people in front, so you can't sit there." They would always blame even the bubble top. Well, President Kennedy is a man of the people. He wants to be close to the people. And of course, Kennedy's dead, so he can't defend himself. There's no witness that ever heard Kennedy say any of this. In fact, Jackie wanted the bubble tops to be left on. But no witness ever heard Kennedy say this, and because he's dead, he can't defend himself or deny it. But this became a very convenient alibi for the Secret Service to explain why these decisions were made. Anyway, if Godfrey McHugh was sitting where he normally sits, that throat shot wouldn't have been possible. All right, so you have the lineup that takes place at Love Field. Here, a couple things I want you to observe in this picture. You'll notice that the front car, you see how close the Secret Service car in back is to the limo. It's right on his bumper. And that makes sense because these guys are here to protect the president. So they're close. But the car in front, which is leading the motorcade, is also there to protect the president. It's got Chief Curry in it. It's got Emry Roberts in it. It's got all the big wigs from an police standpoint, the sheriff, the Secret Service. It's got all the people in charge of security. And you would think they'd be right in front. And normally they were right there in front of the limo. So at the limo, now, usually there's motorcycles to the side and to the front, but they would be right in front of the motorcycles. They're not. They're way off in front. And since the motorcycles have also been removed, look how clear the field of fire is. If you have a shooter in the right location. And in this case, the president is going to be shot from the front. It's going to be up in front by the overpass on the railroad yard. And that field of fire is clear. If you watch the Zapruder film, by the time he passes the Stemmons freeway sign and gets in front of the grassy knoll, that field of fire is clear. And there were people there keeping people from standing or sitting directly in front of where the fatal shot came from. Field of fire, always clear. Tells you a lot about where the shooter was. Just look at the fields of fire and where the clearings are. You have very obviously all these efforts to clear the field of fire in front. And then there's that field of fire from Grassy Knoll, which is clear as well. So, because you can't have someone else get hit by a stray bullet, that causes all kinds of problems. As they found out from the shot from behind, which hit James Tague at the overpass, that created a huge problem for the Warren Commission trying to keep it to 3 shots, which is why they had to come up with a magic bullet. So you can't have someone else get hit by a stray bullet. So you got to clear those fields of fire. And I've already mentioned to you that the flatbed media truck was also sent to the rear of the motorcade, which would also made a front shot impossible. So let's think about all the different things that have happened to clear the field of fire in front. The media truck's been removed. Godfrey McHugh has been removed. The motorcycles have been removed. And then when we get to the side shot from the grassy knoll, the people are going to be removed so that there's a field of fire clear there. The bubble top has been removed. The motorcycles on the side have been removed. And the 2 Secret Service agents who would have been riding on the back limo running boards have been removed. Again, experienced agents wouldn't have gone along with this. I wanted to show you. Let's see, where can I put my picture here? All right, this is going back to Dublin again. Look at the motorcycles around the limo. All right, this is in a foreign country, and even they there are very cognizant because these security services basically use the same procedures no matter where you go. Look how protected he is. Those fields of fire are not open. They're not clear because those motorcycles, and they're constantly moving in and out, in front and back, speeding up, slowing down, swerving. And it's a nightmare. If you're a sniper from distance, especially at ground level, you got to wait for the perfect opportunity when the field of fire is clear momentarily, and then you might not have a good shot at the president. And when you do have a good shot at the president, the field of fire is not clear. It's just harder. You can't control when and where the shot comes from. But now look at the Dallas motorcade. All the motorcycles are to the rear. The field of fire is going to, from the front is wide open, and from the side it's going to open up when you get in front of the grassy knoll. Right here it's not, because they're along the city streets. They haven't made any of the turns yet. But when you get to the Dallas. I mean, this is the first turn, but you haven't got to the grassy knoll yet. When you get to the grassy knoll, you'll see a parting. It's like the Red Sea just parting, because there's people on the ground preventing people from standing or sitting in the way of that field of fire. It was a total setup from the get-go. And then you have the motorcade route itself. And I think we've beat this to death, but you can see the original route was supposed to just go straight on Main to the triple underpass. Instead, at the last minute, the 90-degree turn, the 120-degree turn in front of the tall office, not just one office building, Texas School Book Deposit, but also Del Tex, which is where they found, where they arrested Eugene Braden. That's where Charles Nicoletti was, the Chicago sniper from the Chicago crime family. Johnny Rosselli was his spotter in that building. And then you got the grassy knoll, and the front shot, I believe, came from the triple underpass, just looking straight down that street right at him. And of course, that field of fire is completely open. And when they get in front of the grassy knoll, that field of fire is clean. It doesn't matter if you're firing from the Daltex, Texas School Book Depository, you're firing down. So you don't, field of fire is already clear unless you got a tree in your way. So the limo had to slow down to 8 miles an hour to make that 120-degree turn onto Elm Street. So they try to keep it almost 30 miles an hour. So they're down to 8 miles an hour. The first shot happens, and instead of hitting the gas and that being the slowest that the car is going at the time of the shooting, it actually slows down even and comes almost to a complete stop for the next 5, 6, 7 seconds until all the shooting is done, and then he takes off. Now, man, this is all possible because the regular driver is dead. The guy who would have been planning all the Dallas trip is on vacation. The guy who would have been in the passenger seat is no longer is not there. The two guys that have been on the running boards are in a coffee shop downtown Dallas somewhere. I mean, they've just stripped away all the security for the president. He is just completely exposed. Now, why make this reroute at the last minute? Well, it's pretty clear. If you let him go straight, he evades or bypasses the kill zone. But you don't want to give it away too soon and get people thinking about it too much. So you wait till the last minute to make the change. And you come up with some, I would be interested to know what the explanation was. I would be interested to know what Mayor Cabell said about why he made that change. I'm sure there was a public reason, a publicly stated reason. Probably had something to do with, well, more people will be able to stand on these streets. It'll extend the motorcade a couple more blocks, whatever. I don't know. But you wait till the last minute to make the change so people don't have time to change it back. And the idea is if you can't get the shooters next to JFK, you bring JFK next to the shooters. That's exactly what they did by changing the motorcade. Straight on Main does not accomplish your goal if you're trying to get him at Dealey. And so they changed the route. And it brings him through the kill zone, which is Daltex, Criminal Courts Building, Texas School Book Depository, Grassy Knoll. I mean, triple underpass, overpass. It's a turkey shoot. I think they said that, they used that expression in the JFK movie. I've been showing that JFK movie to my class, and I kind of got it in my head right now. It's a turkey shoot. He doesn't have a chance. So I began today with 2 questions. The first question was, how do you corrupt an agency like the Secret Service? Do you have to corrupt everybody or just a few? All you gotta do is get the few at the top, and then they make personnel decisions, right? This guy needs to be gone. He needs to be on. These guys need to be on vacation. We'll put these guys in charge because they'll do what they're told. Uh, and there's going to have to be somebody on the ground who's in on this with us because he's going to have to be making decisions in real time that support the plot. That's Emry Roberts. So you got the guy James Rowley in charge. He puts his guy Emry Roberts in charge, and then afterwards he sends his guy down, the inspector Kelly, to make sure everything went the way it was supposed to go. And you replace all the experienced people with inexperienced people, and they just, yes, sir, yes, sir. They do what they're told. And in real time, when the crisis is upon them, they don't react because the guy in the front is yelling into the radio, stand down. And there's this tension in their brain. Do I do what my boss tells me to do, or do I do what I know I'm supposed to do? Well, if you're an experienced guy, you say, well, I'd rather ask for forgiveness than permission. I'm going to go do what I'm supposed to, what I'm trained to do, and I'll answer for it later. That's kind of what Clint Hill did. Clint Hill defied the order, but he was in charge of the protection for Jackie, not for Jack. So he ran up to protect Jackie. Nobody ran up to protect the president. Meanwhile, a few cars back, Rufus Youngblood, Secret Service agent assigned to LBJ, jumps over, vaults over the seat, gets on top of LBJ, throws him down the seat, and he yells at everybody, get down. So they're protecting the vice president. So they know what they're supposed to do because one of them did it. But everybody in charge of protecting the president just sat there on their hands, just watched it. And everything had been set up. Bubble top removed, motorcade route changed, no 112th military intelligence on the ground to worry about. L. Fletcher Prouty's out of the country. Gerald Ben's home mowing his grass. Floyd Boring, who the hell knows where he is? He's not there to plan everything. Our guy, Emry Roberts, is in charge. Stand down. Gets the guys off the running boards. Everybody in the rear car just sits there. The bubble top's been, and it just amazes me that in the face of this preponderance of all this evidence, people want to give the Secret Service a pass and say it was just a bad day. No, I do not believe in coincidences. When it comes to this case, I do not believe in coincidences. None of this was a coincidence. And I believe Thomas Shipman was taken out because primarily they knew you got to have a driver who's going to hit the brakes. You got to have a driver who's going to do the exact opposite he's supposed to do. And Shipman won't. He won't go along. They probably went to him, told him what the plan was, what he was going to be expected to do, and he said no. Well, now he knows, and he's a problem. So he can't just be told to go on vacation. They got to actually take him out. The other guys were sent on vacation. They were never going to be part of it anyway. They were just replaced. Fletcher Prouty, Gerald Ben, Floyd Boring. Shipman was killed because I believe he knew what was fixing to happen, and he wasn't going to go along with it, so they had to take him out. I kind of agree with Vince Palomero on that. I think that's the only scenario that makes sense. And then everything else fell into place because you got the guys at the top. And then after the limo gets to Parkland, Raleigh takes one look at JFK, says he's dead. I'm going with Lyndon. And from then on, he never leaves Lyndon's side. And we're going to see as we continue through this, one of the things that starts happening is in the immediate aftermath, people are running to the grassy knoll, including cops. And what do they find up there? Suspicious people flashing Secret Service badges. I didn't even mention the fact that so the guys that are probably suspects, probably the guys who shot the president, are getting away using Secret Service cover. And I didn't even mention the night before what all these inexperienced agents were doing at the cellar. They were all out all night drinking, partying with showgirls all night long. Some of them lost their badges. Some of them lost their guns. They show up bleary-eyed the next morning for what now turns out to be the most important motorcade, most notorious motorcade in the history of the world. And they've been out all night. Again, experienced agents would know better. These are inexperienced agents, and they just made a cluster. I'm going to go ahead and say it. They made it into a complete and utter clusterfuck. And chalked it off to a bad day. In the Warren Commission, even in the House Select Committee, when they were asked about it, were any of these guys punished? Anybody lose their job? Anything happened to them? I mean, this is just a comedy of errors. And the word that came back from the Secret Service chief was, no, we think they've suffered enough. Nothing, there was no accountability. Remember, ultra virus, immunity. It's all about immunity. And if the guy at the top was in on the plot and it worked the way he intended it for it to work, he's not going to punish those guys. He's going to reward them because they played along. They played their part. The Secret Service did its job. Not the job that we think that they're supposed to do. But remember what Fletcher Prouty said, the president is only safe if the elite guard protects him. If the elite guard lays down on the job, the president will be killed. The king will be killed. And that's exactly what happened. All right, that's episode 94. And we'll continue on tomorrow with some more aspects of the Secret Service. I might as well just call it what it is, clusterfuck. Some of you liked my word I was using early in the episodes about rat fucking and how that was all during the Watergate stuff. We talked about that. Well, there's no other word that says it better than clusterfuck when it comes to the Secret Service. But I maintain it was not coincidence. These were not mistakes. It wasn't a bad day. This was all intentional. So check out my website, sbhistory.com, and feel free to comment on the YouTube channel. Feel free to subscribe to the YouTube channel. Also, help me out. Give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed this. Hit the notification bell, and feel free to share this episode or any others that you liked or you enjoyed or you found particularly useful. And I would appreciate it. Thank you. Everybody have a good day. See you tomorrow.